our Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, has set and come out today, as well as Prime Minister Trudeau, with some very aggressive emissions reduction targets that are probably going to pressure the Alberta oil field very heavily. What kind of response do you have to that sort of planning and projection, I guess?
Well, I think it's very important that any policy that we implement takes into account the regional uniqueness of the West and just how reliant that economy is on oil, natural gas, LNG production. And so I think that we have to take that into consideration, and any policies that are implemented should also look at how much of this product are we importing. And if we're not dealing with the importation of that, then again, what we're doing is we're creating policies that's just going to stymie production in certain areas. It's going to create alienation, exacerbate the already existing alienation. Because if you look at the policy of the regulation Bill C-48 and Bill C-69, we know that those regulations favored foreign production, and it really crippled our local industries. And so we witnessed corporations fleeing Canada, going to other places that had more enabling legislation. And that's really, really problematic. And so we have to make sure that our environmental policies are all encompassing and look at our natural gifts and our natural resources and our natural endowments, such as the accessible oil reserves that we have.
So in getting further with infrastructure, because I mean, there is quite a demand for oil at this time, and gas and ethically produced Canadian products, but we're having a very hard time getting it to market. Our pipelines have been stopped in almost all directions, whether Keystone to the south or Northern Gateway to the west, or Energy East, of course, to the east. Would a government under you be examining more ways for Canadian products to get to Tidewater?
Absolutely. I think it's very essential. And I look at the environment from a holistic perspective. So I look at the entire life cycle of products, whether they be electric cars or solar panels or wind generation. I look at the entire life cycle from the day it's created to how do we dispose of it after we're done using it. And so when you do that, you'll see that certain things are not as environmentally friendly as we actually think they are. And the building pipelines that is the most efficient way to transport LNG and our oil and gas. It's very, very important. It's that we build these pipelines. It's more efficient than trucking and rail transportation. And I think it's very important that we get our product to Tidewater, because we will be able to offset some of the dependency on Russian oil that we see in Europe. And it will also bring revenues into our country and assist us with some of the issues that we're having with the high rates of unemployment that we're facing post-COVID.
Great. And then getting into more governance issues, I guess, and such, an area of concern for us has always been equalization. We held our referendum on that recently in Alberta. We do understand it's constitutionally entrenched. It's not easy to address, but the formula is within the ability of the federal government to set and determine. A lot of people in the West feel that perhaps the formula hasn't been fairly treating outlying provinces. Would you be looking at reviewing the formula and how equalization has been applied?
Well, I think it's important that we look at some way of making the formula more equitable. And if you take, for example, what's happened with COVID, you'll see that the current formula, there's a 3-year lag period. And because of this 3-year lag period, in times of real hardship, just that we've experienced in COVID, the West have been paying, provinces like Alberta have been paying equalization payments based on days of prosperity. And right now it's days of famine, basically. And the formula has no mechanism of being altered to account for that current reality. So we have to, I think, even though it is constitutionally entrenched, I think Canadians are fair, and that when they recognize that something is not working in the best interest of say a particular province, and that it's unfair in certain respects, I think they will come to the table and find ways to modify the formula so that it's more equitable.
Great. Your leadership competitor Pierre Poilievre the other day put out a release talking about digital currencies and facilitating the expansion of those within the Canadian market. Have you determined a stance or looking at those sorts of things going forward, as we have something of a new developing whole kind of industry and means of commerce on our hands right now?
Well, many people are concerned about digital identification and just the infrastructure that blockchain will bring in for facilitating that digital ID. So I think it's very early to say that that is something that you're going to implement without knowing whether or not this is something that the people want. I think it's a little bit presumptuous, and it's not something that is in our campaign at this present time. Although we haven't put out fully our policies yet, we will be putting out our policies. But we're also very sensitive to the fact that people are very concerned about the digital ID and the repercussions of the blockchain on altering how we do things.
Great. Something I've been asking each candidate as I get them on, something we of a tradition in Alberta since the late 80s has been, we at least go through the motions of electing senators to nominate and propose towards Ottawa. And often if we have a favorable government, they will appoint the ones we've chosen. Would you commit to appointing senators if a province should elect them?
Well, to be honest with you, I actually like the way that Alberta does this, because it's not patronage, it's the people, it's grassroots. And so the senator in waiting campaigns that took place last year, I found them very, very interesting, because the candidates were out meeting with the people, engaging, seeing what the response was, and then the members were able to vote on who they wanted. And so in such a process, the person that is most connected to the community is the one that represents it, and not someone that's handpicked by the government because of past favors or because of connections. So I think that the Alberta system is very, very good. I support it. And absolutely, if the people have said that this is who they want to represent them, I think that that should be honored by whichever prime minister is in place.
Great. Economically, we've got inflation, of course, has been a very strong issue all over the world now. A lot of it's been related to the pandemic, related to overseas conflicts. But I mean, a lot of it's been probably, can be directly related to the amount of government spending and borrowing we've done. Is there a plan to rein in borrowing and spending and some of the output from the Bank of Canada?
I think what's important is that we have to make sure that we bring our supply chains home, and that we up our manufacturing production. And so we want to start being more of a production economy, where we're producing things, we're generating wealth, rather than the government just basically indebting future generations and creating a debt society. So we want to change that. And the only way that you could really do that is to bring back confidence in the economy by either incentivizing or promoting and encouraging small and medium-sized businesses who employ over 80% of the population to start reinvigorating, reemploying people and taking chances again. And once we are able to get the economy kick-started again, up our production, then you will see a reduction in inflation, because you'll have real dollars, not just debt, not just debt in our economy. And people will have real money that they can buy products, rather than fewer products out there being chased by lots of debt dollars.
Great. Another thing that's put pressure on a lot of consumers when it comes to staples like foodstuffs is Canada's supply management system. It's a touchy issue. It always has been, but it's one that certainly comes with a cost. Is there any consideration of possibly reforming or moving away from that system?
Well, the problem is that our production, our products that we get from supply management, I actually enjoy the fact that we have a superior production and output. And if you look at some of the things the enhancements that are used by, say, in the United States, like BST on their cows, and the just the amount of pus that you would get in milk, and I just find that those products are not on the same level as our Canadian products, and so you have to pay for quality. And when you look at some of the industries worldwide and you ask our smaller producers to compete with them, they would be completely overshadowed. We would not have independent industries. And so while I am a free market person, and I do believe in free market, and I think it's I would still think that we would need supply management to assist our farmers, or else they would be overtaken by foreign production.
Okay, I'll pivot a little. I mean, something that's quite new on the scene for us, unfortunately, but it's in foreign affairs. You know, the world certainly has changed now with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It seems to have expedited the prime minister in finally getting forward to buying the F-35s for Canada that they've sort of shelved for quite some time. But where do you land on Canada's military spending and force, or where would you envision Canada's military being in the future?
Well, it's been years since they should have bought those F-35 jets years ago, and I'm glad to see that they're making some commitment to do that now. I think that our military has been underfunded, and this government has failed to provide for our military and to make sure that they were properly equipped. I think that we had a lot of wasted time, and there was a lot of vulnerabilities there. But when you see the recent acts of Russian aggression, and you realize that we technically share a border with Russia, so our Arctic coast is something that is very, very fragile, and we have to make sure that we have the capacity, the military capacity, to protect our borders. Even beyond that, even beyond the jets, I think that Russia has over 40 icebreakers, and we have zero. We need to up our military capacity and invest in making sure that we can defend ourselves.
Great. Well, I think we've already, it goes fast, run out the time we'd allotted to sit down with you. I hope we get more chances before the end of the campaign. But is there more you'd like to add before we let you go, Dr. Lewis?
Well, I will be in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba in the next week. I start my tour on Friday, so I look forward to perhaps popping in if you have a studio, or meeting various people out there. So it should be a very good tour. I look forward to meeting the people in that region next week.
Great. And well, we did expand actually into a nice, larger new studio. So I hope we can get you in here for an extended interview at that time. I look forward to you coming out, and wish you the best as the campaign develops. So thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Lewis. And I hope we can talk again soon.
Awesome. It was great. Thank you so much. Take care.